For 10 long years, he spoke to no one but the wind until a bruised Apache bride appeared on his porch, barely breathing. Who was she? Why his door? What followed was a story that would change both their lives forever. Let's begin. The wind had a way of crawling through the slats of the old ranch house like it belonged there, soft, persistent, and patient, just like him. Samuel Rigg hadn't spoken to another soul in nearly 10 years. He'd once been a man of words. Sunday greetings, market barters, a touch of whiskey, and a laugh shared with neighbors. But grief quiets a man in strange ways. When the fever took his wife and their unborn child in the same bitter winter, Samuel packed away his voice like it was something he'd never needed. And the world let him be. Out here, 50 miles from the nearest town, surrounded by bone-dry hills and stubborn grass, silence grew thick like moss. Days blurred into each other. Feed the horses, fix the fence, check the well, repeat. His only company was an old mule named Luther and the wind, always the wind. It was a Wednesday when it happened. The morning had been like any other. He'd been sharpening the scythe behind the barn, eyes narrowed against the rising sun. The rhythm of stone on steel, the closest thing to music he allowed. Then came the sound. Not a knock, not a voice, a thud. Low, final. Something collapsing. Samuel paused, the scythe resting across his knee. Luther brayed once from his pen, uneasy. The hairs on Samuel's arms lifted like prairie dogs sensing a coming storm. He stood, walked slowly, around the side of the house, boots crunching against dry earth. The front porch lay quiet in the morning light, the boards sun-bleached and brittle. And then he saw her, a woman, crumbled on the top step. Dirt streaked across her white dress, what was left of it anyway. It had once been fine, maybe even elegant, but now it was torn at the hem, stained with travel sweat, and something darker at the edges. A wedding veil clung to her tangled hair. One shoe gone, blood crusted around her bare ankle. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Samuel didn't move, not at first. He blinked, as if the vision might disappear in the sun haze. But she didn't. She was real, flesh and bone and ruin. Her hands trembled against the wood, trying to push herself upright. Then she slumped again, and just before her eyes rolled back into her skull, she whispered something. He didn't hear it. He hadn't heard anything in so long. But her voice, what little there was of it, broke something in him. A quiet crack, like a thawing lake. He knelt beside her, hand hovering above her shoulder like he was afraid to touch. Then, finally, he lifted her gently, her body warm and limp against his arms. She weighed next to nothing. Inside, the house smelled of tobacco, cedar, and old memories. He laid her on the same couch where his wife had once embroidered in the evenings, the same couch he hadn't touched since. He fetched water, a damp cloth, stripped off the tattered veil, and laid it on the table beside her. She didn't wake. Her breathing was shallow but steady, like wind threading through dry reeds. Her hands, he noticed, were calloused, not dainty, not soft like the women from town who wore parasols and practiced piano. These were working hands, someone who'd held reins, or run. He sat across the room in the rocking chair that never rocked, just watched. The silence in the room had changed. It wasn't his silence anymore. It was hers now too. The sun had just begun to slide west when she stirred. Her voice rasped, "Water." He rose, slowly, and brought it to her lips. She drank greedily, then coughed. She looked up at him, eyes sunken, but sharp, like she was trying to read something in his face. "You live here?" she asked, voice broken around the edges. He nodded once. She looked around the cabin, blinking. Slowly, "You alone?" Another nod. She sat back, hand on her chest, as if trying to calm her own heartbeat. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. "Didn't mean to fall, just kept walking." Samuel wanted to ask, wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in his throat like stones. So instead, he leaned forward and pointed to himself. "Samuel," he said, the first word he'd spoken in years. She blinked in surprise. Then, her voice soft, but clear, "Lena." And then the tears came, hers, not his, quiet ones, the kind that come after too many days holding everything in. He didn't try to stop her. He just sat back down in the rocking chair and listened to the sound of someone else breathing in the silence that had, for so long, belonged only to him. Outside, the prairie swayed in the late light. Inside, a bride rested in the house of a ghost, and something just beginning hung between them. He didn't sleep that night. The wind scraped gently against the windows as the old ranch house groaned and settled into the dark. Samuel sat by the fireplace, hands folded, eyes on the glow of embers. Across the room, Lena lay beneath a wool blanket on the couch, one arm draped over her eyes like she was hiding from whatever memory chased her here. She'd asked no more questions, but questions bloomed like weeds in Samuel's mind. What bride walks this far alone? What was she running from, and why here? He hadn't said more than his name. Couldn't. His voice, unused for so long, felt strange in his throat, as if every word needed to pass through a wall he wasn't sure he wanted to tear down. Just before dawn, she stirred, sat up slowly, grimacing as her feet touched the floor. The hem of her dress was still damp from where he'd washed the blood off the night before. She pulled it over her knees and looked at him with eyes that hadn't yet decided whether to trust. "I didn't mean to bring trouble," she said, softly, "but I think I did." Samuel didn't move. "I walked 27 miles, she continued, "from Carter's Crossing. Didn't stop but once. No one would let me in." Samuel tilted his head. "They saw the dress," she whispered, "and they shut their doors." Her fingers clutched the fabric in her lap like it was fire. "Thought maybe if I didn't look like a bride, someone might help. But I ran out of time." She looked up at him again. "You the only one who didn't slam a door in my face." He shifted in the chair, clearing his throat. "Why were you running?" he asked, voice hoarse and low, like a gate creaking open for the first time in years. She looked down, took a long breath, then spoke. "My husband," she said, "if you can call him that. He paid for me." Samuel didn't flinch. "Mail order bride," she added, "from Kansas. My family sold me off like I was just another cow to move west." Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. "He met me at the station. Big man. Smiled like he'd won a prize pig. Didn't ask my name. Just grabbed my bag and told me what chores I'd do, what time I'd rise, how many children I'd give him." Samuel said nothing. The wedding happened in his kitchen. No preacher. Just a bottle of whiskey, and two witnesses who looked like they hadn't seen a clean woman in months. She paused. "I ran that night, took the dress, some bread, and started walking. Followed the rail line until it vanished, then the stars." She looked at him again. "I didn't think I'd make it." Samuel rose slowly, poured a cup of coffee, handed it to her. No judgment, no questions. Just warmth. She took it, her fingers brushing his. A long silence passed between them. "Someone'll come looking for me," she said eventually. "Men like him, they don't like being embarrassed." Samuel nodded. "You still want me here?" she asked. The question landed in the middle of the room like a thrown stone. Samuel didn't answer with words. He walked to the front door, opened it wide, and looked out toward the horizon where the dry road met the sky. Then he stepped aside. She stared at him, confused. "You're letting me go?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. He looked at her, soft but certain. "I'm saying if you want to leave, I won't stop you." Her eyes filled again, this time with something other than fear. She stood slowly, walked to the door, and looked out across the land. The wind pulled at her tattered veil still hanging from the porch post. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she said. Samuel nodded. "Then stay." He said it plainly, not like a command, like an invitation. She stepped back inside. Behind her, the sun began to rise, casting long orange light across the floorboards. That afternoon, he brought out a set of old work clothes, his late wife's still, clean and folded in a cedar chest. Lena didn't flinch at the gesture. She took them quietly, disappeared into the barn, and came back looking like she belonged there. She helped him fix the fence that day. Said little, but when she caught her finger on a nail and hissed, he was there immediately, wrapping it in cloth without a word. She didn't pull away. By sundown, she'd helped milk the goat and boil the stew. That night, she took the old bedroom. He slept in the rocking chair again. This time not because he had to, but because he wanted to hear her breathing, not to guard her. Just to know she was still there. But the peace didn't last long. 3 days later, the sound of hoof beats cut through the wind. Not one horse fast, coming up the road with dust behind them like smoke. Samuel stepped onto the porch, rifle resting loosely in his hands. Lena appeared behind him, her breath catching as she saw them. She didn't need to say it. One of them was him, the man who'd bought her. He wore a black coat, wide brim hat, and a grin that didn't reach his eyes. The second man, taller, younger, rode behind him with a rope coiled at his saddle. The first man tipped his hat. Well, I thought I'd lost you, darlin'." Lena's breath hitched. Samuel didn't move. The man looked at him, amused. "You her new keeper? You think a little silence and a rifle makes you righteous?" He spat into the dust. "That woman's mine. Bought and paid for." Samuel looked at Lena, then back at the man, and said, clearly, evenly, "She ain't." The man's grin faded. A beat passed. The second rider reached slowly for something under his coat. Lena stepped forward, and that's when Samuel spoke again. Just 3 words, but they changed everything. "You need to leave." The man laughed, but it was thin now, uncertain. "You deaf or dumb, old man?" Samuel's voice didn't rise. "You're not taking her." The man's hand twitched near his belt, and Samuel lifted the rifle, not aiming yet, just holding it across his chest. The younger man froze. The older one, Lena's husband, glared at her. "This ain't over," he said, then turned his horse and rode off into the dust. Samuel lowered the rifle. His hands were steady. Lena exhaled for the first time in minutes. He looked at her, face unreadable. She reached for his arm, but he turned and went back inside. Not angry, not afraid, just quiet. Like always. But Lena saw it now. It wasn't silence born of grief. It was silence that guarded something deeper. Something dangerous. Something good. The knock came just after dusk. Not loud. Just one, then two, then stillness. Lena was washing the supper dishes, sleeves rolled up, hair pinned back with one of Clara's old combs she'd found in the bedroom drawer. Samuel was at the table, oiling the rifle he hadn't touched in weeks. They both froze. He set the rifle down slowly and stood. The knock came again, not at the door, at the back. He exchanged a glance with Lena. Whoever it was had circled the house quietly. Samuel stepped lightly, boots silent against the floor. He opened the kitchen drawer and removed the smaller revolver he rarely used, an Old Navy Colt, and tucked it into the back of his belt. He opened the back door with one hand on the latch. Slow and steady. Nothing. Just the porch creaking under the weight of wind. Until he looked down. A rock, smooth, palm-sized, sitting on the step, with a mark etched into its face, a symbol he didn't recognize. A warning, or a message. He crouched, picked it up. It was warm. Lena stepped beside him, her eyes on the mark. "You know what it means?" he asked, voice low. She nodded slowly. "They're watching." He stood up. "Your husband?" "No," she said. "Someone else." He waited. "The man who helped him find me. The one with the rope. He wasn't just a ranch hand." Samuel's jaw tightened. "He has friends," she added. "The kind who work between law and outlaw. The kind who clean up messes." Samuel glanced out across the field. Dusk had dipped into full night. The wind had died to quiet. He closed the door later, as darkness thickened outside. He lit only one lamp. The silence that night wasn't the same. It was sharp. Listening. At midnight, Samuel walked the perimeter of the ranch, rifle across his back, lantern in hand. The air felt heavier now, like it was holding its breath. He checked the fences. No breaks. But hoofprints deep, fresh, marked the soft earth near the rear pasture. Someone had come close, then circled away. Lena was still awake when he returned. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice thin. "I wasn't his only girl." Samuel said nothing. She wrapped the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "He ran a trade. Women from the East. Promised husbands. Most never made it past the first season. A few never made it at all." Her eyes were hollow now. "I was the only one who escaped." Samuel's mouth was a hard line. "Why didn't you say so?" he asked. "Because I wanted to be someone else here." He didn't look away. "You still can." The words were quiet, but she heard them. The next morning, Samuel saddled his horse before dawn. "I'm riding into town," he said. Lena stepped onto the porch, arms crossed. "To tell the sheriff?" "No, to send a wire." He shook his head. "I need to look someone in the eye." Town was 30 miles of dust and silence. Samuel rode fast but low, hat pulled, eyes scanning the ridges. Every distant movement made his stomach tighten. He wasn't afraid. He was sure. The saloon in Carter's Crossing was a sagging, weather-beaten building with cracked windows and the smell of spilled whiskey baked into its bones. Inside, the usual crowd murmured around poker tables and smoke curls. Samuel pushed through the batwing doors and scanned the room. He saw him near the back. Not the husband, the other one. The man with the rope. The man who didn't smile with his eyes. Samuel crossed the room slowly. The man looked up, surprised just for a second. Then that oily grin spread across his face. "Well, I'll be," he drawled. "The mute rancher speaks." Samuel didn't answer. "You come to return what ain't yours?" the man asked. Still no answer. "You know, a man's property." Samuel stepped forward. Quick. The Colt was already in his hand, pointed low, pressed against the man's thigh. The grin disappeared. "No law in here, friend," Samuel said. "So, I won't talk again." The man's chair scraped backward as he stood, hands up, crowd shifting uneasily. "She's not yours. She never was." The man's lip curled. "You don't know what she did." "I don't care." Silence swallowed the saloon. Samuel lowered the gun. "Just a fraction. You step on my land again," he said. "You won't step off it." Then he turned and walked out. Didn't run. Didn't look back. He rode hard for home. The wind picked up, near the ridge, carrying dust and the scent of rain. The storm wasn't far when he reached the ranch. Lena was waiting at the fence, hair whipped by the rising wind. "Did he follow?" she asked. Samuel shook his head, but his eyes were dark. "He won't come himself," he said, "but someone will." They spent the rest of the day boarding the windows, fixing the hinges, prepping the house not like it was a home but like it was a fort. That night, thunder rolled on the edge of the plains. Lightning lit the sky just long enough to reveal 3 riders, far off, silhouetted on the ridge. Watching. Waiting. Rain fell in slow, heavy drops like the sky couldn't decide whether to cry or bleed. The 3 riders hadn't moved for hours. Just shadows, quiet and patient, on the ridge. Watching. Inside the house, the lanterns burned low. The rifle lay across Samuel's lap. He sat in his usual chair near the front window, listening to the storm whisper across the porch roof. Every creak in the wood felt louder. Every gust of wind might have been boots on gravel. Lena sat by the stove, hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't sipped from in an hour. Her hair was damp from the walk to the barn earlier, where she'd tucked the animals in like children before a siege. The silence between them wasn't tense. It was full, weighted with everything they hadn't said. Finally, she spoke. "You ever been in a real fight, Samuel?" His eyes stayed on the window. "Once." She waited. When he didn't continue, she looked down at her hands. The bruises on her wrists had faded, but her fingers still traced them like old bruises could whisper back. He turned toward her, voice gravel soft. "My brother and I were ambushed driving cattle up through the red hills. We were just boys barely. Had chin hair. They came at us out of nowhere. Took the herd, left us bleeding. I lost half a finger. He lost the other half of himself." Her brows lifted slightly. "He died, no. He drank." Samuel looked down at his hands, as if still seeing the scars. "I told myself I'd never be caught off guard again. So I came here, quiet, careful, alone." Lena's voice barely rose above the rain. "And did it help?" He met her eyes. "Until you showed up." A pause, then she smiled. "The kind that doesn't reach the mouth, but aches behind the eyes. I thought you were going to let me die on that porch," she said. "Would have made sense." Samuel looked back toward the window. "I nearly did." She stood and walked to the table, lowering herself into the chair across from him. "I don't want to bring more trouble," she said. "But if they come, I can fight." Samuel shook his head. "You've fought enough." She looked at him then, her voice barely a whisper. "You don't know what I've fought." Silence again. Then she reached into the pocket of the dress she'd been wearing when she arrived, a stitched up mess of silk and prairie cloth, and pulled something out. A photograph. Old, faded, cracked at the corners. She slid it across the table. Samuel picked it up. A younger Lena, standing beside two little girls, one on each side. Braided hair, mismatched shoes. No parents in the photo, just Lena, and the slight curve of her arms behind the girls, like she was trying to protect them from a world too wide. "They're my sisters," she said. "Back in Kansas, I was supposed to send money for food, clothes, school." Her voice cracked. "Instead, I got sold to a man with whiskey on his breath and blood on his boots." Samuel's hands were still on the photograph. "I didn't want to marry him," she said, "but I thought maybe I could survive it. Maybe I could be useful, strong, for them." She looked at him now. "Then he hit me the first night." Samuel didn't blink, didn't look away. "I stayed for 3 weeks," she said, thinking it'd stop, that I'd learn how to make it easier. "Then he brought another girl to the house, said she'd be company for me." Her voice turned cold. "She was 13. Samuel exhaled, long and slow. "That's when I ran," Lena said. "Didn't care if I made it or not." Her hand brushed the rim of the coffee cup again. "You didn't ask for me. You didn't want this. But I'm here, and I won't be helpless." The thunder cracked, closer now. The riders were still out there. "Why'd you help me, Samuel?" she asked, voice trembling. He looked at her for a long time. Then he said, "Because when I opened the door, you looked like my wife did, the night she died." Her breath caught. She had fever, burning up. She called out for her mother, not me, and I realized I couldn't save her. His eyes darkened. "So I never tried again, not with anyone." Lena stared at him. "But then there you were," he said. "Same porch, same pale skin, same broken look in your eyes." He leaned forward, and I thought, maybe this time, I don't run. She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "Not in romance, not in pity. Just human. Solid. Real. He didn't pull away. The storm crested. Then, rain hammering the roof in sudden sheets. But neither of them moved. They sat in the middle of it, hand in hand, in the quiet eye of a storm much older than either of them, outside. Lightning lit the ridge and the riders were gone, vanished into the night, or moved closer. The storm passed some time before dawn. The rain faded first, then the wind, leaving behind a thick, breathless silence that stretched across the land like a shroud. The air smelled of wet dust and pine sap. Clouds lingered low on the ridges, holding back the sunrise. Samuel stood on the porch, boots slick, with rain, rifle slung over his shoulder. His eyes traced the edge of the hill where the riders had watched all night. No one there now. Not a single hoofprint. No smoke. No sound. He didn't trust it. Lena came out behind him, a blanket wrapped over her shoulders. She hadn't slept either. They hadn't spoken much since the night before. They didn't need to. The wind was picking up again, different this time, cold from the north. It carried something heavy with it. By mid-morning, Samuel found what it was. One of the horses, dead, strung up from the fence at the far end of the pasture. A warning. Its eyes were gone. The flesh around the legs cut in ritual shapes, neat, deliberate. Tribal, maybe, or something darker. The kind of message meant to gut a man's resolve. Samuel didn't flinch. He took it down without a word. Buried it beneath the cedar tree near the ridge. Then he came back and started packing. Not to run, to prepare. Lena watched from the doorway, arms crossed. What are you doing?" she asked, her voice tight. Samuel opened the trunk beneath the floorboards, took out a smaller rifle, ammo, 2 knives. "They're not going away," he said, "and I won't wait for them to choose the night." Lena stepped inside. "Then I'm going with you." He looked at her, not dismissive, just unsure. She pulled on her boots, grabbed the knife she kept by the stove. He didn't argue. They saddled the horses and rode out by noon, left the house behind. Lanterns still lit inside, like a lighthouse, in case they made it back. The trail was faint, but Samuel found it. Whoever had hung the horse hadn't tried hard to cover their tracks. Mud prints, broken reeds, a torn scrap of canvas snagged on a branch. They were moving slow. Camped somewhere close. By dusk, they found them, a hollow in the rocks, half ringed by scrub oak and thornbush. 2 men, maybe 3. 1 fire. 1 tent. Samuel stopped just short of the clearing. Lena dismounted silently, crouched low. You sure? She whispered. He nodded once, but as he moved forward, gun ready, a voice called out from the shadows. Didn't expect you to come to us, old man. Samuel froze. The man stepped into the firelight. It was him, the one with the rope, the one who'd grinned in the saloon like he owned the world. No grin now, just a pistol in his hand. Lena stepped beside Samuel. The man blinked. Well, look at that, he said. The little bride. Thought you'd be halfway to Mexico by now. He raised the gun, but he didn't see the third person coming from behind the rocks. Not until it was too late. A figure moved silently, struck hard, something blunt against the back of the man's head. He dropped. The pistol clattered in the dust. Lena gasped, but Samuel stayed still. The stranger stepped into the firelight. Young, weary, Apache, no paint, no war cry, just calm. He looked at Lena, then at Samuel. I watched. The boy said in a voice like dry leaves, from the ridge, I saw you protect her. Samuel said nothing. The boy gestured toward the fallen man. He sold girls to minors. My sister was one. Lena's eyes filled. The boy knelt, tied the man's hands, then stood and looked at Samuel. You want him dead? Samuel shook his head. The boy nodded. Then I'll take him to my people. Let the women decide. He turned without another word, dragging the man behind him. When they were gone, silence returned. Lena let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. You knew they were watching? She asked. Samuel nodded. I hoped. They returned to the ranch under a sky full of stars. The porch light still burned. The next morning, a note was tied to the fence post where the dead horse had been. A piece of hide, etched with a mark Lena had seen before. Safe. One word. That's all. Months passed. Then a year. The threats stopped. No more riders. No more messages. No more eyes in the dark. The land softened. Grass returned. Crops held strong through summer. Lena planted a rose bush near the porch. It bloomed late that spring. One morning, she handed Samuel an envelope. Inside was a photo. 2 girls, older now, sitting on a wooden stoop back east. Behind them, a schoolhouse. They're all right, she said. He smiled just a little. That night, they sat together on the porch, like they had the first night. Quiet. Not because they had nothing to say, but because they didn't need to fill the air anymore. The silence wasn't empty now. It was peace. And when people from town whispered about the woman in the prairie dress and the quiet rancher who lived with her, they didn't know the story. Only that something happened out there. Something no storm could wash away. And when travelers passed by, they often saw the 2 of them sitting side by side. No veil. No rifle. Just 2 hands resting together on the arm of a weathered chair. And a porch that had once held a bride and a ghost, now holding something stronger. A home. Home.